Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for joining us. Me, still getting used to this whole solo thing. So much so that I actually played Reaver Common Sense intro instead of my own. Because it's Monday. Welcome to the Monday Midday Mayhem. Somebody asked me this week, why are you calling it Mayhem? Like, you don't do anything crazy. I don't know. The news and the politics are the mayhem, not me. I mean, I'm mayhem in my own way, but not normally in this juncture, so to speak. This is the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHR Media Network, KLRN Radio as well. Say hello to the fine folks over there. Check them out on X as well. I'm firing up the old chat machine as we speak. Thank you for listening for Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and X, if that's where you are listening from. The chat will be open. Feel free to jump in and say something on any of those platforms. I think Rumble's the only one. I think Rumble's really the only one that I don't get regularly through the broadcast software. I gotta check on that, actually, now that we're talking about it. But yeah, if you're in the chat room on X, please say hello. How's your weekend? Tell me what you did. Tell me what you're up to. Tell me what sort of insanity is going on or what's on your mind for news this week. I'm going to start off. I want to start off in the Middle East with Israel and Iran. We've all been expecting the Israeli response to the Iranian bombing not too long ago. Missile strikes. You remember it. One of the people I follow on X, who's usually really, really good at info and sharing and some pretty good insight too. Pull this up for you. OSINT Defender. If you look at this tweet, there it comes. It's taking me a second. It's still early for me. I didn't sleep great last night. Did you sleep really good last night? But they state Channel 14 in Israel is reporting that the Israeli retaliation against Iran will be significant, if not moderate, and will likely cause Iran to respond, with them further stating, we need to prepare for a significant exchange of blows that might drag the Americans in, which Iran certainly would not. And I have so much to say about this topic right here specifically. I said before, I'll say it again, I'll say it a million times. I am all for Israel doing as much damage as they can to Iran. Honestly, it's just, it needs to happen. October 7th, but everything, as I said before, everything Hezbollah and Hamas does, Houthis, is because of Iran. They don't move without Iran saying so, which is why dead Iranian generals keep showing up in Lebanon. Is because they're in charge of that. I do not want to get dragged into this. I understand, and I've already talked to a couple of people on X, which this whole conversation that I got into here was really interesting. I had a couple different perspectives that, one of the things I like about X is you either get some absolutely insane responses to things, or you get some very intelligent responses to things. There's nothing in the middle, it seems like. But, there are people in there saying, well, we're already involved. We're already in the mix. We're already this. We're already that. And I understand that. I understand that we have people on the ground in Israel. I'm not saying we don't. I don't think we have people on the ground in the inner circle in Israel. And that's only because Lloyd Austin freaked out last week when they found out Israel took out another Hezbollah leader. But I definitely understand that. I know we have ships in the region. I know we did intercepts for them in the past. I know we're putting more assets there. I get all of that. When I say boots on the ground, and they'll be involved in the strike, our AWACS will be whatever. This has been gone decades, right? With Israel since the 70s in Iran. And we've always had stuff like this happening. And when I say I don't want boots on the ground, that's what I mean. I don't want to be part of an invasion. I don't mind providing defense, stuff like that, because we have treaties, we have agreements. If you want to change that, that's a whole that's a different conversation, right? We're here right now. But there are people who are either like, hell yeah, let's bomb the hell out of everything in Iran. Let's get involved. Let's do what we can to help out. And there are other people saying, kind of like me, where it's like, Israel's really good at military stuff as long as they have the assets. So let's just give them assets. And, if we have to catch a few rockets on the way in, then we'll do just that, or missiles or drones. There's a lot of speculation on how much damage Israel can do to Iran, because specifically the nuclear program, because it's buried in that mountain. But one of the points that was made earlier was we can do a lot of damage to Israel. Sorry, I keep getting them jacked up. It's early Monday, blah. Iran's nuclear program without getting into the mountain per se. There's a lot of things outside of that: command and control vehicles, delivery systems, et cetera, et cetera. So we can set them back, or Israel can set them back quite a ways just through that. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on this? If you're in any of the chat rooms on X, either here or KLRN or on Facebook, whatever, throw it in there. I'm just curious. I know there were reports that back channels were used between Iran and the US, and Iran did the typical strongman, I don't want to seem weak statement, where they said, hey, tell Israel that as long as their response is proportional, we won't continue to aggress. I don't know how long that'll last. It's Iran, but that is when a strong man says something like that on a world stage, what they're saying is, please don't hit us hard. That's what Iran is saying. Please don't hit us too hard. The whole or we'll keep, or there'll be a counterattack. I'm sure there will be. I mean, they've shown they've had the capability to launch 100, 200, whatever at a time. But that's strongman of, I can't say please no, so I'm going to put it in this terminology so it seems like we're still bolstering, we're still standing our ground, but please don't beat us up. It's really what it sounds like. And if you go through Habitual Line Crosser, it's done something about this, and there was one of the history shows I watch on X, or one of the military history shows, was doing a thing. It was a British guy. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about the Iranian air defenses. Iranians dumped a ton of money into drones and long-range missiles and other technology. They're putting a lot of money in a tank that's not developed yet, because they're still using old Soviet tanks for the most part, T-72s and the likes of those. Some of their military still using 60s era American helmets. They're not the most well-prepared military. They have strength in their drone force and their rockets. Their ground troops outside of the the Republican Guard, are really questionable at best. They don't have much of a navy to speak of. They have all those corvettes and fast attack boats. So Iran is very much a paper tiger beyond their missile systems and their drones. They're supplying a lot of drones to Russia. So I don't necessarily buy the argument that somebody was making that, they're trying to draw us. They're ready for war with America. Iran is not ready for a war with America, because they know what'll happen first. Air superiority will come first. How is that going to come first? Well, first of all, their Air Force is old. They have a couple of more modern jets, but they're not great. They're not up to snuff. Pilots and training is questionable. This is not all my information. This is information I've gathered from other places. And, they have some F-14s, which how wild would that be if we start shooting down F-14s? But I don't see any of that happening. I don't see them wanting us to engage them, because it would be sustained bombing of all of their command and control for days at a time before we landed anybody. And then on top of us, they would have to deal with our tanks. They just don't want that. Nothing says that Iran wants that. That is why they've been using proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, to attack Israel. They don't want that smoke. And I don't want them to want that smoke. I don't want troops on the ground there. I don't want to deal with that You don't get into a land war in Asia, and you don't get into a religious war in the Middle East, right? We've seen how that works out. It drags on and on. I mean, I don't know. What's your answer for what to do in the Middle East? The number 2 against tyranny, @2 against tyranny on X. You can put it in the comments and chat. Put it in the comment underneath if you're not in chat and Rumble. Do me a favor before we go any further. Give me a like or a thumbs up if you are in a place that you can do so if you're listening from any one of those places. So it's just going to be interesting to me to see how this shakes out. My thought is that you're going to see Israel bomb the hell out of them for a little bit. Maybe a night, 2 nights, just really take out a lot of command and control, hit airports, hit military bases, yada, 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 and then see what happens. Said Israel saying it's going to be a moderate response, so we'll see how that plays out. Moving on, happy Columbus Day. And I already started fighting. What are you calling it? Tell me that in the chat, in comments below. You calling it Indigenous People Day or Columbus Day? I'm calling it Columbus Day. As I said when they first started throwing out Indigenous People Day, why don't we just have a day that's just for them? And I'm going to play you as soon as I find it, because I'm super awesome at this. There it is. I'm going to play you this clip from the Vice President, Kamala Harris. This was her speech this morning about Indigenous People Day.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
Sorry about that. It's Monday. Dude, it's killing me today. I don't know why I have the Monday so bad. I muted myself for that video and I never turned it back on because I'm a jackass. How? As I was saying, I wrote a piece on SHRmedia.com called VP Stand on the Ground of Indigenous People. If you don't want to take a minute to check that out. Long story short, and why this is wrong, is it's a revisionist history. We know it's a revisionist history. Columbus was not coming to conquer when he sailed for Spain. Columbus was looking to reach Asia. And yes, did we come over here? Yes. Was there disease and smallpox that came with us? Yes, but it wasn't just us, right? Did we find the Native American tribes here in total peace and harmony with one another spread throughout the entire country? No. The French and Indian War, they were picking sides because they were already at warring with each other. The entire world was warring with each other over land. There was slavery. Native Americans took other Native American slaves. There was slavery all over the world. There were so many other conquerors all over the world. And when you say things like this, it is a dog whistle. They love to use that term towards conservatives. This is a dog whistle by somebody who's failing right now in a campaign. She's floundering. I will give you my speech about don't let that affect what you do on election day. You show up, you vote, you get there, you put it in, etc. Foot on the gas, don't look back. If you're so sure we're going to win, make it embarrassing for them. That being said, this entire speech is a dog whistle against white people. It really is. To suggest that no other people would have ever found North America if Columbus didn't is BS. To suggest that only Europeans acted in slavery or violence against locals and indigenous people in lands all over the world is BS. To suggest that there is peace and harmony in North America when we got here is BS. All of it is just BS. The world was a much different place than it is today. If you try to view the past through the goggles of today, of course it's going to be atrocious. But you need to view the past through the goggles of the past. Understand how the world was at that time. It wasn't like suddenly the Europeans were just all of a sudden trying to take over. Look at the Ottomans. Genghis Khan. Since the beginning of time, people have been trying to conquer other people. It still happens today. Slavery still happens in part of this country today. Sex slaves. But look, we talk about the 320,000 missing kids in this country of illegals. You think some of those kids aren't in sex slaves right now? I mean, I know it's grotesque, and to you and I, it's absolutely horrific to think about. It still happens. So to say that Columbus was coming here to take slaves is insane. They were looking for Asia. They were looking to trade silk and spices. This is not up for debate, but it's also not up to be used to further divide people. Did the Native Americans suffer? Yes. Did the colonialists suffer at the hands of England? Yes. Was there a French and Indian War in which Native American tribes picked sides against each other? Yes. Have Native American tribes taken out and completely destroyed other Native American tribes? Absolutely yes. It's all yes. But that doesn't change the fact that today we don't need to be fighting over that. And we also don't need to be rewriting our history. It's break time. Hopefully I get my crap together because I'm a hot mess today. I'm gonna have a drink. Not cocktail yet. It's still, maybe I will. Be right back in 2 minutes right here on the SHR Media.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to Reaver of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a sharp wit and clear discussion. Tune in every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a refreshing dose of reality as we fearlessly tackle the tough topics with no nonsense, just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com to discover where you can catch Reaver of Common Sense in action. He's here to amplify your inner logic. He may not always be polite, he may not always be refined, But one thing's for sure, he always tells it like it is.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Mute button. Got it. Damn mute button. Telling you, man, I'm just taking myself out today. Taking myself out of the game. What an idiot. So before we go into the break, we're talking about Kamala Harris. And, man, she's had some rough appearances the last couple of weeks. She's doing Brett Baer, I think, tomorrow or Wednesday. I saw that really quick. That ought to be interesting to see which Brett Baer shows up. I know people give Brett such a hard time. I think one of the things that Brett Baer does is I think he tries to play the over neutral news guy almost too much, and it hurts him. I don't necessarily think that I that's exactly what it is. I think he tries to be overly neutral, and it just jacks him up. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I know people will come after me at the number 2 against tyranny if you want to comment on X. Also in the chat room, right here on the SHR Media Network, simulcast with our good friends over at KLRN. There's some wonderful people. I'm getting to know some new folks over there since the last time we worked with them. Super exciting. Tonight, you'll 9 o'clock Pacific. I believe Jersey Joe is finally recovered from the hurricane. He will be back live. He may push back to 10 tonight. So just double check on that. If you check on KLRN's website and Jersey Joe at Reverb Common Sense, I'm sorry, at Jersey Joe, but Reverb Common Sense on X, you'll be able to find out for sure. I should have checked for everyone on the air, but I'm not really good at this. So going back to Kamala's disaster, this thread struck today. This is an interesting one. It's from Christopher Rufo. It says, exclusive, Kamala Harris plagiarized at least a dozen sections of her criminal justice book, Smart on Crime, according to a new investigation. Vice President even lifted material from Wikipedia. The investigation was conducted by Dr. Steven Weber, a famed Austrian plagiarism hunter who had taken down politicians in the German-speaking world. We independently confirmed multiple violations, which are comparable in severity to the plagiarism found in the former Harvard president Claudine Gay's doctoral theses. And then it goes on and on. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it just goes to show the amount of, what's the word I'm looking for? BS, as the French would say, that comes out of Kamala Harris. One of the things that I've said from the beginning, I think I said this last week, I've said it all over the internet, and I still believe this. You got to understand, people. The reason why she flip-flops how she does, the reason why she can't get through an interview like a normal human being who's done it 100 times, which she has, she's done it 100 times, and she still flubs it. Why? Well, we know when, because the nervous cackle comes out, right? But she flubs it because she is AstroTurf. 110% AstroTurf. Everything about her is fabricated. She was groomed as a young ADA via Willie Brown into the political world. In California, Willie Brown was a very powerful Democrat. He eventually went to the up to the state level. He brought Kamala with him. She was appointed to all of these different committees that were no-show jobs. As an ADA, as we're seeing the reports Harmeet Dillon's thrown out, that she's lost over 1,400 cases. Not lost. They were thrown out because they were so poorly put together. There are excerpts coming out of her reviews as an ADA where she was getting subpar reviews by her bosses. As an AG, she was garbage. Like I said, she's pushed AB 109 and Prop 47 that single-handedly ruined the safety of California. As a senator, again, people's like, well, she went it all the way up to senator. She ran for senator as the attorney general in a Democrat state. Of course she was going to get elected. Nobody really ran against her. A couple other people, I think, threw their names in the hat, if I remember right, but nobody had the name notoriety. She already had the name notoriety because she was pushed up the chain. When she became AG, she was garbage. Then she became a senator, the most liberal senator to ever sit in the Senate. She's left of Bernie Sanders. Think about that for a minute. The dude who honeymooned in communist Russia. She's left of Bernie. But the reason why she was all of these things is because the Democrat machine was forming her to be such. You got to remember, when she ran and they didn't want her to run, that was the first time I think she kind of shrugged the Democrat machine. When she ran in 2020 and she called Joe Biden a racist, and then suddenly it was his best friend when he called her and said, hey, I need a black woman to be VP. And politically, you're one of the best known names for it. So will you take it? And, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we'll help each other out. People say, oh, that's not what happened. That is 100% what happened. Joe Biden said it was going to happen when he said, I will appoint a black woman as my VP candidate. There's one thing about Joe. He lies a lot, but he also tells a lot of dumb truths politically that he doesn't want really to say, but it just comes out of his mouth like everything else, like corn pop and all of those things. This is how he talks to dead people. It's how he snapped at his assistant earlier this week for telling him he had to take the VP's call. There's no love between those. But going back to Kamala, she's fake. She's astroturf. She's not real. Now that she's running the campaign, and I think she's so overconfident in herself and her abilities that she's listening to nobody. Right? There are reports of massive, like, arguing behind the scenes. A report of arguing between the Biden-Harris administration in the White House, and not literally in the White House, but in the White House per se. Right? You look at the man ad commercials I ran Friday. There was another one too for Tim Waltz that was like a ripoff of the 90s Coors video. It's just a really poorly run campaign. And there's a lot of speculation from political insiders, and I've read a bunch of them online, like people, you know, notoriety, who are saying it's because she doesn't listen. She thinks she knows everything. So she's running the show. Instead of listening to, I don't know, the people who do it for a living, which we can argue whether or not those people should exist in politics, because you end up voting for this exact thing, the image of a certain politician and candidate versus the actual politician and candidate. The problem is she thinks she's better than what they can put together. So she's being herself, and it is not going well publicly. As I said before, screw what the polls say. Everyone shows up. But optics is just horrible. They are absolutely losing males by and large, except for white dudes for Harris and Harry Sisson. I think they've lost just about every other male because it's the most condescending, insulting. Like, these are the same people, and guys, don't forget this. These are the same people that for 4 years told white males they were everything that's wrong with this world, everything that's wrong with this country. And then they started telling just males in general. It went from white males are all bad because domestic terrorism and they're all neo-Nazis to just kind of males in general with the Me Too movement. Like, males we just don't like them. They're icky. Ew. How many times did you see on social media, and I've seen the memes 1,000 times over, of females just being like, well, if we could just bring men out to breed and put them away, that'd be great. Well, you wonder why they're not going to support it. You wonder why. It's insane. And now she's suffering, and she's not she's suffering hard. It's not pretty. It is not pretty. And what's amazing, and really what I'm happy about, is she gets help. But then it's not really help. Here's Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton has been out campaigning for her. You thought Barack did bad the other night when he was telling the brothers they have to show up, and what did he say? Trump didn't change a diaper, as if that somehow, whatever. But then you were dragging out Slick Willie, which it kills me how many people forget who Slick Willie is. It shows you that time often paints people in a much more pleasant historical view. We all know who Hillary is because she won't get out of the goddamn headlines. She's the one who doesn't like to admit that she lost. Remember, she called Trump an illegitimate president. But this is her husband, ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know. And I say that semi-sarcastically, but then I also feel like I have to say it kind of honestly, because a lot of people are like, oh, he was a president. He was a president who was famous for a lot of things, including having inappropriate affairs in the oral office. I even said to myself, don't say it out loud, say Oval Office. But here we are. And it involved a cigar and a girl by the name of Monica Lewinsky. He wasn't, the Clintons are not good people. I don't care what anyone says. The Clintons are not good people. And I don't know, maybe they were at one point in their life, like as children, but as they've gotten over, man, as I've said before, I don't know anybody in this world who've had so many friends who've died under suspicious circumstances, friends, co-workers, associates. The Clintons are like in the 50s for that number. But anyhow, I digress. Bill Clinton's out campaigning for Kamala, and he was asked about the border, and he said this, which I thought was pretty enlightening.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not.
Bill, hold on. I got to stop that right there. If they were properly vetted, no kidding. What a concept, Bill. Here's a little hint. Why don't you tell your friend Kamala to tell her boss, Joe, who she was working with hand in glove. How many times have we heard that out of Biden? We're working hand in glove. To have set up the system or maintained the system that was properly vetting. That does not mean every single person is going to get caught entering the country illegally, but at least we had much better procedures in place. We had a better chance. When you told people, not you, when Biden told people essentially the country's open again, America's open again, this is what happens. We have the receipts. The caravan started the day it was announced he won the election. So if you're going to bring up Lake and Riley and say, well, maybe if they were vetted, how dare you, man? They were vetted because they weren't supposed to be vetted. They were supposed to flood the country as they are. And then the Democrats were going to try to give them all citizenship as they are trying to do, so they will vote in future elections. I don't care. I can't believe you're talking about the Great Replacement Theory. That's what it is. As I said, these numbers have already screwed up congressional districts. They've already jaded them because these congressional districts are based on the census. The census doesn't ask citizenship. It doesn't take citizenship into account, and the districts are set off the census. It blows my mind how anybody on the left can defend how they handled the border, which is why Border Patrol came out yesterday. The Border Patrol Union endorsed Trump because they get it. They see it every single day. It's not friggin' rocket science. If you open the doors, bad people get in. I told the story Friday about another, 100 and something SIAs, a large amount were people from the Middle East with terrorist ties, just allowed to stroll in. It's just infuriating. They will rewrite history left and right. And what bothers me is there are people who saw what happened with their own eyes that will still deny it happened. We call them sheep on this side of the aisle. And they're out there grazing and barring right along. Bah, bah, Democrat. Bah. You can't be an honest person and look at the border and think everything was okay. And if you are honest about that, you are not a serious person. And if you are a serious person, you are not an intelligent person. Saka Chan just called everybody stupid. The shoe fits. Here's the rest of Slick Willie, though, because I don't want to cut him off. He deserves so much more of what he gets in life.
And America is not having enough babies to keep our population up. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do.
Americans aren't having babies because it's too goddamn expensive to afford babies. And you've also, I don't know, the left has kind of destroyed that whole like get married, settle down, and have kids thing. They've said how horrible that is. And I think like there's some sort of virtue signaling with it. Like you're this like racist if you're like in a regular like relationship and you have kids. Like they've demonized every aspect of relationships. And I'm not necessarily even talking about a nuclear family. I'm just talking about families in general. Well, single people can't afford to have and raise kids, right? Married couples are struggling with 2 incomes to do it. Everything's so goddamn expensive. Why would they have kids? Well, this is why Bill just told you, didn't he? Listen again.
Immigrants that have been vetted to do work, there wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset. You had a case in.
Did you hear what he said there? Did you hear what Bill said here? That's why we need the immigrants. We got to bring them in because people aren't having kids. So let's vet them and bring them in. So when I say there's a little bit of a great replacement theory going on, Bill just said it out loud. He said it out loud. We got to bring people in to have kids because we're not having enough. And maybe it's not we need to replace the population with more liberals, but it's damn close, isn't it? Damn close. They're coming out and they're saying so much that they used to say behind closed doors. And now they don't care, which is, to me, absolutely incredible that they don't care. They'll just say it. And that's because they have so many people in this country who will just agree and buy it. We're up against a break right here on the SHR Media Network, as well as simulcast KLRN. Throw me comments and chats. And we'll be right back after.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to River of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a sharp wit and clear discussion. Tune in every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a refreshing dose of reality as we fearlessly tackle the tough topics with no nonsense, just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com to discover where you can catch River of Common Sense in action. He's here to amplify your inner logic. He may not always be polite, he may not always be refined, but one thing's for sure, he always tells it like it is.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome back to the final 20 right here on the Monday Midday Disaster on the Edge of Liberty show. Thank you so much for joining us. Has been a disaster. I changed it from Mayhem to disaster because, man, everything through the first break was just rough. Rough, I say, rough. Comment in the chat from Cheetah, old friend of the show. You're right when it comes to this. The old gang Democrats like Clinton and Obama coming out really show how desperate Kamala is. Even they don't know how to excite or inspire people. I agree. If you saw Obama this past weekend, he's lost a step, dude. It's muscle memory. Controlling crowd is like any other muscle memory. Getting the crowd amped up is like any other muscle memory. You either use it or you lose it. He hasn't done it in a while. But I don't think they were I agree with Cheetah. I don't think they were expecting to have to come out of retirement for this. But as I said, I think when it came to Kamala at the beginning, it was they never had intentions of her running until the coup happened. They never had intentions of running her until the coup happened. She was going to get reelected, and then at some point, as vice president, this is just my theory. At some point, Joe was going to step down, and then she was going to take over, and they were going to tell her, all right, you were president for 2.5, 3 years, but we're going to let somebody else step in. I think that's why after the coup, you had people like Shapiro say no to her. And I still think, I definitely see some people's point when they're like, oh, no, it's because he's Jewish, and that hurts her with the pro-Palestine Hamas large population and the progressive left. But I also think that there's a big chance that he just said, nope, I don't want to be a part of that. Same thing with Mark Kelly in Arizona. Nope, don't want to be a part of that. I have a political career and aspirations, and this will hurt it. So, speaking of Joe Biden, I'll show you the headline. I'm not going to get into the story because it's really, you can pick it up in the headline. Biden warned Iran that killing Trump would be an act of war. This comes back to the information that we have about Iran having several plots to try to kill the former president, currently running for the next president, Donald J. Trump. Biden, to his credit, authorized more protection, including military aircraft, for President Trump. This does bring us up, and I'm not going to get too far into it because there's still a lot to learn about this. But the man, Vem something or other, can't remember his last name off the top of my head, doesn't matter, who was arrested outside the Coachella. Trump went to Coachella, which is just, it's awesome. Look, I've said my social media, and a lot of people say, well, how come Trump was wasting money in California and New York and places that he's, doesn't necessarily even need, and he's probably not going to carry. And the simple fact of the matter is Trump's never done campaigning traditionally. And I think this is his way of saying to people, even in states where he won't get the electoral votes, like, I still see you, I still hear you, I still want you to be acknowledged. So, and it did bring people in from Arizona and New Mexico, we saw in Nevada. Like, it did bring people into swing states, but Trump was going that way afterwards anyhow. So I really think this was to show people on the West Coast, hey, I'm still seeing you, you're still important to me, and we're doing everything we can. The man was arrested for, there's still a lot of information coming out, but he was arrested outside the rally, made it past the first bubble, made it to the second checkpoint inside the inner bubble. He was stopped, questioned. He had no plates or fake plates on his car. The car wasn't registered. He was real squirrely. He had numerous IDs, passports on him. And I know, like, God, the conspiracy theories already went insane. Oh, he was working, this is a leftist setup. This is this is that. I don't know yet. I know he's already blasted the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, saying that the cop that stopped him was like anti-Trump, but there was other cops there. He did only get $5,000 bail, but it's California, and that doesn't get set by the sheriffs, that gets set by the court system. So there's a lot, but that's weird. But on top of that, we've obviously the 2 other attempts on Trump's life, and then you have a rogue state like Iran making claims that they're going to try to kill him. So Biden added more protection. And speaking of the campaign, DocNet YouTube on X, at DocNet YouTube, has released this story of a man who claims to have been groomed by Tim Walz years ago. And here is my thoughts on this. We are already, if anything's polled correct, even remotely close correctly, we as conservatives are in a decent place this election right now. I do not want to say that we're ahead, because I don't believe that. I will say whatever I have to get everyone to the polls, as I've said before. However, this is uber unconfirmed. There is not a lot of information about this. And I also feel like there may be a little bit of a trap aspect to this. You get everybody on social media stirred up, because here's the thing. Trump can say whatever Trump says at these campaign events. But one of the things that they do is they demonize his followers as much as they demonize him. So if you get a couple 100,000 people online who are now calling Tim Walz, who is a lot of things, I think there's probably skeletons there somewhere. Maybe not in this lineage, but we have enough evidence with China, a lot of other things, that there's some skeletons somehow, somewhere, some way, that we don't really need this. But the left definitely needs something to latch onto right now. They need something to say, look at them, ha ha, we fooled them. This is how quickly they will jump on it. Because remember who we're courting right now. The left, the right, Trump, Harris, they're courting swing state voters and independent voters. The vast majority of people, left and right, already know, already decided, you're not changing their mind. We know that. So they're going to have to change the mind of, or make up the mind with the independent voters and the last few that maybe haven't decided. And I'll tell you right now, emotionally is what they're going to play on, and they will do anything to make us look bad. Careful of the red herring. You think, with all the other things that I've seen out there that we know the left has done, you think that they wouldn't throw out a false story like this to try to sway emotionally the last few independent voters? We're 3 weeks from an election? You think they wouldn't do that? I think that's more likely. And I'm not saying I don't believe the person. I'm just saying I haven't seen enough evidence. It's all coming in a weird, strange kind of way. And I think we should be cautious. We're so quick on social media to run down streets. And I'm guilty. I've done it a few times in the past. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm just saying, especially now more than ever, if we really believe that this election is as important as we say it is, then we need to have cautious steps going forward. We don't need to be tripping and falling down hills. It does not help anybody. Look, any of these independent voters, let me put it to you this way. If any of these independent voters already had their questions about Walz, yeah, this will, maybe if this is true, it would shore it up. But if they already kind of had their questions about Walz, that's already playing in their head. We don't need to add to it. Same thing with Harris. I don't think anything like this helps. Now, if it's true and it gets vetted and investigated appropriately and it comes out that it's true, yeah, Tim Walz needs to be held accountable. I don't know what the state laws are, but he needs to be held accountable. Statutes of limitations specifically. If it turns out to be true. But right now we don't know enough about it, but there is enough out there where it could be damaging right now. Right now, the amount of information out there or the lack thereof could be more damaging to the narrative than it would be to Walz if it's true, until more information is vetted and proven. And that is something that, like I said, I've been guilty of this in the past with social media. Sometimes you just have that day where you jump on something, you're like, oh, but as soon as this came out, I was like, I need more for it. It's like the arrested Coachella yesterday. Like, I need more for it. I need more information before I make a decision. And that's okay. That's something that needs to happen, I think, more as a society. Stop being so emotional. I try not to do it myself. Don't be emotional. Try to be more rational, literal, and factual when it comes to things like this. You're emotional about your kid's birthday or the birth of your child. You're emotional about stuff you should be emotional about. Passionate is not emotional in your decision making. Once you've actually absorbed information, you've used your critical thinking skills. Not a lot left, I know. Perhaps common sense. You've given something time for it to work out. Then you can use your passion to drive that point. That's different than being emotional about something. I know we're all stressed. I know there is a lot riding on this campaign that many of us believe that is very true. But what we don't need to do is run crazy and emotional down a path and potentially harm the voters we need in swing states because they're like, oh, I don't want to be associated with those people. Like, this is adulthood stuff, guys. I don't know how else to say that. You know, if you're trying to prove a point, you should do it as intelligently as possible. Now, once somebody, this is the way if you see me on social media, you'll see me bickering with people, but it's after they throw that first volley, right? I'll talk to them intelligently, and then they're like, well, you're just a blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, now I'm just going to insult you nonstop because once you disrespect me, I have no time. And then it's more of a game for me, if we're being honest. Ask Adam Kinzinger and Billy Baldwin, both who responded to comments of mine. And Adam Kinzinger, God, that little weasel guy who's trying to get troops on the ground in Ukraine. He's like Vindman and all these other little scabs. Kinzinger posted something the other night about JD Vance, and I responded, why do you have your comments off? Like, if you're going to post stuff, you're still going to be in the public sphere. You're a former congressman. You're on CNN. If you're going to, and by the way, I never attack his military service. I haven't done that because there hasn't been a reason to yet. Vindman's different. There's actually reason to attack what he did. But Kinzinger specifically. But I said, you're a real coward to like put stuff out like and not allow yourself. And the way I said it is I had to repost it into my timeline. This is what that slick little bugger does. He knows if I am going to at all disparage what he says, I have to repost it into my timeline. And then what he did is he reposts it and he, with his comments off, and says, look at this guy, blah, blah, blah. Essentially, everybody with the blue and yellow flag go attack this guy because he went after me, the guy who was trying to get people on the, and that's exactly what it was. All the people that are coming after me had blue and yellow flags inside their X profile. And that's how he fights, because he's too much of a coward to have a one-on-one conversation. Why do you think he went to work at CNN? Because he's a liberal Democrat. He's always has been. He's a pro-war guy. He lobbied for boots on the ground in the Ukraine. We don't want to be like them. They're scum. They're shills as human beings. Vindman's another one. He was making a ton of money, or he was set up to make a ton of money off of us getting involved in Ukraine. And because he's of Ukrainian descent, I think there's more to that someday will come out as to his relationship. He knew exactly what he was doing. People like that are just as traitorous to me as somebody who sells secrets to a foreign nation. You're trying to get us into a war that we don't belong in and don't need to be. And like I said with Israel, I'll say with Ukraine, I have no problem giving munitions and stuff like that for them to defend themselves. I hate Putin. I think he's a piece of garbage. I hate when people jump on his bandwagon when he says something that is close to our message, because he's a KGB guy. He uses propaganda to his benefit. I don't believe anything that comes out of Putin's mouth, if I'm being entirely honest. I think he's a piece of garbage. Trump has to deal with him politically and democratically because that would be his job. That was his job. I understand why he maintains a friendlier relationship with him. I don't need to. Same thing with Xi of China. Same thing with Kim Jong-un. Because if you have to communicate, you have to use diplomacy. You do that and meet them and occasionally say, like, look, Reagan did it for years. We've always done it with the Soviets and other people. Like, it's just part of democracy. And when I say democracy, I mean being diplomatic. So diplomacy would have been a better word. I don't want to jump down my throat. Oh, we're a republic. I know. It drives me nuts too. But it's better for diplomacy. You have to be diplomatic. That doesn't mean you have to be weak. I forget where it was. It was some frigid temperature. Reagan met the Russian premier and they went for a walk outside of whatever grounds they were staying at. And Reagan wore nothing but a sweater while the Russian premier was in this huge jacket and hat and was still cold. And Reagan's just throwing around a sweater outside like it was nothing. That's how you use muscle and diplomacy, right? When you're dealing, especially with strongmen, right? Strongmen hate to look weak in public. And if he complained, hey, it's cold, can we go inside? While Reagan's wearing nothing but a sweatshirt, he looks bad. Same thing with Putin. Putin, everything is propaganda. Everything's appearance. Everything's look, right? We don't need to listen to it. He's one of those people. He's garbage. Xi is garbage, but the president has to be diplomatic. That's part of the job, to a point, obviously. Folks, that's going to be it for me here on the SHR Media Network. KLRN, the Edge of Liberty. It's the Monday Midday Mayhem, and it was mayhem. I apologize for me being just dumb. I was dumb in the first half of the show. Buttons, wrong videos. Like, it was a hot mess, man. I am going to have a cocktail. That's it. I decided once I get off the show, it's cocktail time. Just calling it a day right now. I know it's 1 p.m. my time. Calling it a day. Tune in tonight. 9 p.m. on the SHR Media Network, 10 p.m. KLRN for the Reverb Common Sense with Jersey Joe. He returns after being off for the hurricane. Please join him. Check out all the great shows on KLRN. There's so many awesome shows. They're on Spreaker, as am I, and other SHR Media outlets. Same thing with Apple Podcasts. If you like anything I said, or maybe you hate everything I said, I don't care. Take a picture right there on the screen and go ahead and buy me a glass of bourbon if you got the nuts to do it. I'll be back Friday, 12 Pacific, 3 on the East Coast, right here on the Edge of Liberty. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Edge of Liberty. Join me right here on the SHR Media Network every Monday and Friday, 12 on the Pacific, 3 on the East Coast. On this show, we'll discuss news, politics, the government, how cranky we are about the government, and more. If you want to hear hard talk, good interviews, sarcasm, bad jokes, and, oh, God, that really is me in a nutshell. Either way, check me out right here on the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Friday, 12 Pacific, 3 on the East, on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Edge of Liberty. Join me right here on the SHR Media Network every Monday and Friday, 12 on the Pacific, 3 on the East Coast. On this show, we'll discuss news, politics, the government, how cranky we are about the government, and more. If you want to hear hard talk, good interviews, sarcasm, bad jokes, and, oh, God, that really is me in a nutshell. Either way, check me out right here on the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Friday, 12 Pacific, 3 on the East, on the SHR Media Network.